All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation on protests, what next, is continuing here. And let me introduce my guest one more time. Samuel Mesaki is here as a national youth leader. Asante sana for making time. Muthiora Kariara is here, former presidential running mate. Tim Kipchumba, founder, Mentathon Foundation. Wanjiku Thiga, founder, Gears for Change Initiative. Wanjohi Njoroge, youth consultant. And Josephine Wanjiru, youth and gender activist. And Mesaki, I'll come to you on this. We were talking about whether this protests are losing relevance and what next. Do you think they are losing relevance, and what should be the next steps going forward?
I think going forward with the protest, I think they have actually lost relevance in the recent days. But when it started so well. It was very peaceful. And we supported because the issues that were raised were very pertinent issues. But along the way, there are elements that infiltrated these demonstrations and picketing. See what has happened in Kitengela. You're not even talking about the business people. The looting that has been there. People have lost properties, lost business items, goods. Some of them have taken loans. No one is talking about that. We really sympathize, of course, with the young people who have lost their lives in this protest. And we do not condone any police brutality. But we cannot watch the country sink into anarchy. As young people, we must be held accountable. We must hold our leaders accountable. But we cannot leave this country. I was speaking to a friend of mine who is part and parcel of the peace talks in Sudan. And he was mentioning to me something that you guys are really joking with this thing. Because how it started, it was reject finance bill. The president hit to that call. It was withdrawn. He said, dissolve cabinet. It was done. The IG should go. He resigned. And you see what they're calling now is an act of anarchy. They want the president, they want to remove the president from power, which is unconstitutional. We need to have moderate and modest way on how we can be able to engage the conversation with the government going forward. The government would need to build a government of national unity, and which is composed of the issues that have been raised and composed of young people going forward. If we don't let that, because we have seen that people have taken advantage of this protest, and it has now become what we would not expect. South Sudan has taken more than 3, 4, 5 decades to be back, and still they are not there. Because of the issues that are there. We can joke with this thing, and now it will culminate into something else. So I propose, going forward, let's engage the government. Let's have the multi-sectoral committee that the government stated, and let's raise the issues there and demands that this is what we want. Okay. We need cabinet secretaries. Yeah. We need these numbers. We need this to be done. Let it be there, so that the people who want to take advantage of the protest cannot get away, cannot get a loophole into it. So
we need actionable points. Let me bring in Wanjohi on this. Wanjohi, are we playing with a ticking time bomb here? And what next? What are the next steps going forward?
Trevor, first and foremost, the police and security forces exist to provide security. When they say that they cannot adequately provide security because they don't know who the leader of this movement is, it speaks to their incompetence. Most of the young people are armed with a phone and a flag and maybe a placard. Even criminals have a right because they are human beings. They are innocent until proven guilty. So arrest the person who has been found to be destroying property. I will give you an example. Naivas supermarket and Quickmart supermarket were vandalized for 3 hours. Never mind that Kamukunji police station is a stone throw away from where this was happening. Business people were calling the police, and the police did not respond. A whole building was torched. Right now, a young man is arrested buying a flag and a whistle to demonstrate. But the police cannot come and protect businesses that they claim to care about. You get what I'm saying? We are talking about dialogue. But I want to tell you, before I dialogue with you, Trevor, there has to be something. There has to be an element of trust. We lost Rex on the 20th of June. Today is 19th, nearly a month later. That one life should have been the last life we lost. It should not have even been lost. But after losing Rex, the president and his deputy, who promised Kenyans that our mothers, that we've seen mothers and grandmothers losing their minds, moving from one mortuary to another. Then you tell us to come and dialogue with the people who do not value our lives, who are willing to eliminate anybody to stay in power. Allow me to take you back. We're saying that young people are saying Ruto must go. But allow me to take you back to how this thing started. And you will see it is actually the president telling us he's unable to deliver on the promises he made to Kenyans. He's unable to deliver on the mandate bestowed to him by Kenyans. One, he swore that extrajudicial killings would be a thing of the past. He swore, and he used the Bible to promise Kenyans that he would not overburden us with taxation. After the finance bill, first, the taxes started, last year they introduced the Finance Bill 2023, which later became an act when it was passed. And Kenyans said, we are now feeling the effects of the COVID-19, and we've just come from elections. Please, let us not introduce new taxes now. Did they listen? No. What followed? Opulence. They bought helicopters. The political class was living. They were riding. They were living on the highway. When the rest of us, life was unbearable. We're talking about businesses, but how many businesses closed down? How many people lost their jobs because businesses could not sustain them? Are we talking about the cost of doing business? Are we talking about the cost of borrowing money? The interest rates right now, you get? Okay. So why are we forming a task force as though we do not know the issues that are facing us? But before we even get to the table, the president has failed, and he continues to fail over and over again, and he's punishing us. He's killing us as a result of his failure.
Okay.
We would love to dialogue with him, but not when he's killing us.
Okay. So, team, if dialogue is not the way, then what is?
Just to say honestly, anyone that would have been a president in this moment would have had the same problems that the president is currently facing. You will have your right.
Let him finish.
We from 1986, it was predicted that we would have about 6 million young people that are unemployed. If we didn't do two things, if we didn't formalize SMEs, and if we didn't invest in agriculture. For some reason, for the last 3 decades, we never just got around to doing exactly that. So we are buying in investment in agriculture. We are also buying in formalizing and supporting small and medium enterprises. A good government helps because it facilitates commerce, facilitates every human being as it were, every Kenyan as it were, to achieve their aspiration. That's the role of government. In the end, government can only give you health, should give you security and law and order. But in the end, it's up to every Kenyan to do something with their lives in a way that allows them to achieve their aspirations, but also, hopefully, the aspirations of other people. Today, the median age of the country is 18. So it's clear the future is young. There are more young Kenyans today than there are more, 18-year-old. And it's part of the reason why we began Mentothon. We participated interviewing young people that participated in 2007 general election violence, interviewing young people that were in Kibera, that were in Eldoret, that were in Kisumu, anyone that participated in violence, and those young people that did not participate in violence. Asking ourselves, what is it that made these young people move from crossing this threshold of being non-violent to being violent? And we found an array of factors, 91, that could predict the likelihood of a young person becoming violent by 91%. But one factor stood out. It could predict the likelihood of a young person becoming violent by 49%. And that factor, in psychology, they call it self-efficacy, which is the link between someone's effort and what they want in life. If someone believes that their own effort can get them what they want in life, they were 49% less likely to be violent. Really, more loosely connected is self-belief or hopelessness. So I think it's clear that the biggest challenge of the last decade, and I'm telling you this, having devoted the last 10 years of my life to it. I've written 2 books for high school students. We've mentored a little over 60,000 high school students. This year, I just came from Elgeyo, Baringo, Marsabit, mentoring from 4 students. Our target was to potentially reach 20 to 25,000 high school students, because they are the median age of the country. We are not listening to them and talking to them. They are the majority. We need to be having conversations with them. And I think the cry of this decade is a cry of opportunity. I never got employed when I finished college. My first job was to begin a company. We began Questworks. And we began initially with 4 employees and 8 employees, and then we grew to 50, we grew to 100. I think at our peak, we were employing 200 employees directly. Now it's a little less. And we've worked in Kenya, we've worked in the region. I think really, we need to start going to the fundamentals, irrespective of what cabinet comes today. The challenges remain the same. We have to spend 1 trillion Kenya shillings more this year, probably more, 1.5 trillion more than we have. We raise 3 trillion, less than 3 trillion. We spend more than 4 trillion because just debt alone is 2 trillion. Government salaries and wages and pension is 1.6 trillion at least. Counties alone is 0.4 trillion. There's just no way, there's no magic about it. So of course, there is possibility to potentially make leaner public service to be leaner. And I think we don't have a choice on that. We do need to make public service leaner. So that, I think that should be part of the action point. How can we make public service leaner? Could we potentially, because if we make public service leaner, government borrows less. And if government borrows less, more money can go to private sector. And if more money goes to private sector, cost of capital to private sector goes low, and therefore jobs can be created, which ends up helping us solve the larger problem of unemployment, the larger problem of income. Because we really must now start now to speak to what is it really that is causing the need for protests. It's not, it's jobs, it's cost of living. And what is causing all that? We should speak to the fundamentals, as it were.
Let me bring in Mudiora on this. So Mudiora, what next? This is a question we keep asking, because if the country goes left, we all lose out, okay? So what next? What can we do now where we are?
Okay, Trevor, when we ask what next, we are assuming we are done with the protests. We are still in the phase where we've not had accountability from those who committed atrocities against peaceful protesters. So we're still within that phase. And just allow me to put things into perspective.
But the IPOA says they forwarded 4 names to the DPP on the same. And they've also complained that they've not gotten enough support to do their investigations,
Thank you very much.
But there's an attempt.
Exactly. 4 cases. I'm glad you hosted a commissioner here and he confessed to the frustrations they are facing in bringing to book those who are culpable or allegedly have been seen to have been culpable when handling the protesters. Now, Trevor, you may want to sell fear to the Gen Z movement, but they've categorically said they can't afford it because they have no money, because their dreams, their future is being stolen away, and where they are at is so bad that anywhere else is better. Now, people are afraid that we could go the Sudan way. I will tell you this, Trevor. Sudan did not have the kind of a constitution that Kenya has. Trevor, Sudan is not a non-NATO ally of the US. Sudan does not have the status that Kenya has. So, yes, there is that risk, but then the environment is really very different. If you listen keenly, you'll realize that the Gen Zs did not start with the call that Ruto must go. They had demands and they laid them out. This process is being hijacked, but because those charged with maintaining law and order are not competent enough to deal with the situation, they are choosing to suspend the Constitution. Because when they say you can't protest in the CBD, because we are not able to provide law and order given the nature of your movement, that's basically suspending the Constitution.
The High Court set that aside, so we have structures. The High Court has called that offensive.
And we didn't have to go to the High Court for that to happen. We just need people to apply the law as has been written, both in letter and in spirit. So, yes, there is the risk that we could lose this country. But then let's look at what we are fighting for. Is it too much that's been asked for? And I will tell you it's not. Our president promised a lot of things and whetted Kenya's appetite. But then looking at the actions he's been taking, we clearly know that if we were going to Mombasa, we took a route to Turkana. And we want to get back on course. That's why we are asking them to listen. You played a story here about the government spokesman's statement yesterday. And when he was told to explain why the president would on one day say that no government official is supposed to participate in Harambes, what did he say? Hiyo story tuachane nayo. And that's why the Gen Zs are saying, if that's the case, basi anguka nayo. Because when we are calling for them to account, they are saying, well, look at what happens in other countries, countries that are not exactly what they compare us to when they are taxing us. Trevor, this is the situation. If the president and the regime is not capable of delivering the Kenyan dream, they can consider stepping aside and Kenyans will figure out who can.
Okay. So
Kenyans
hold it
have
right
not.
there.
Kenyans,
so hold
Kenyans,
it right there. Let's delve into that for a bit. So the president steps aside, okay?
Yes.
Constitutionally,
Yes.
the deputy should take over. Is that a better option?
Now, what we are saying,
Let's stick to the constitution that you mentioned. Yes or no? Is that a better option?
I have not asked that the president steps down.
Okay.
I have said that if this government is not able, and the government is the whole presidency.
Okay.
So
But-
that's the president, the deputy.
Okay.
We've seen it in France.
So then in the
we saw it in the
Constitution-
UK.
Let's stick with Kenya. In the constitution, if the presidency, which you've mentioned, the president and the deputy president steps aside, then we're talking about the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, to
Yes.
take over for 60 days
Yes.
and then call for an election.
Yes.
Do we have an IBC?
Now, the president can today, just like he called for a press conference at State House, call one and say that in 6 months, I will have taken the following steps. I will have put in place a functional IEBC. So that will prepare us for an election because clearly it appears that you're not comfortable with my leadership. If he's patriotic enough, if he realizes
very
that indeed this country will go to the dogs if I do not step aside, he can bite the bullet.
Yep.
For the sake of Kenya, he can choose to sacrifice his own ambition.
So in this
That's the
case-
possibility that Kenyans are not looking at.
And I'm indulging you further on this because you are a presidential running mate. So
Yes.
when we talk about this level, you're talking about high levels of conversations. So in this case, on one side, you're calling for a rectification of the way places we've gone wrong on.
Yes.
But on the other side, you're calling for him to step aside. So which one is it? This is why we're saying, what next? Should he fix the issues that are being asked of him? Or should he leave? And if he's leaving, what does he put in place? Because even if he's going to fix the issues that have been asked of him, he would need a bit of time, right? Even now, reconstituting cabinet so that people see whether is it really true that this cabinet is the face of Kenya or not. That still takes time, right? So which one is it? Should he fix the places he's gone wrong, or should he just up and leave?
Trevor, Kenyans have expressed themselves and they have said that the one thing that fuels corruption in this country are the public harambes that are conducted every other time that are spearheaded by politicians. He listened and he said that no government official should participate in that. But then, very few days after he made that pronouncement, he went against it. You see, those are the kinds of things that are fueling the defiance you're seeing.
If you were the deputy president, which you wanted to become, what would you have done at this point? Fix the shortfalls or just leave office?
When I am the deputy president, I am the principal assistant of the president. I will follow his lead.
And what would your advice be to him?
If he asks that we have lost favor with our people and we need to step aside, that's what I would do.
Okay.
That's what we have seen respectable governments do.
All right.
You saw an entire government resign in France,
Okay.
in the UK.
Okay.
Personally, and I'm saying it here, that if for some reason I was not able to deliver the promise that got me into office, I would step aside for the sake of the nation.
Okay.
Now,
and you feel we've gotten there already?
No, we have not. We are asking that, Mr. President, our demands are very reasonable. Mm-hmm. Act on them. When you made promises during your campaigns, you knew you had a plan.
Okay.
That plan is what we need you to implement, guided by our Constitution.
Okay.
And just one more thing about the law and order thing. As a country, we are capable of maintaining law and order. We are capable of managing those armed gangs that are infiltrating the protests. Trevor, we have volunteered our police to Somalia. I'm sure you know that. Lately to Haiti. Actually, this week, I think we sent more police officers to Haiti. That means, look, given our leadership, they think we have the capacity. Now, we cannot say we are not able to fix our own problems when, in fact, we are aiding other countries.
Okay, let me bring in Josephine on this. Josephine, so what next, in your view, as a young person? What happens now?
Thank you, Trevor. I feel you've asked most of the panelists on that question, and I will be the one to directly answer that question. One thing that is constant is the Kenyans have lost trust and a bit of faith in the government, and that's fine, you know. Like, we have seen so many promises that are broken, some maybe that were fulfilled that maybe we don't even know, but the state of living, cost of living is slowly getting dire. But now that the Gen Zs and the Kenyans have gotten the renaissance and have talked about it, and that all the things that we have raised in the beginning have been actioned, I'd like Kenyans to know one thing, that it's easier to have control than to eject. It's easier to have a manipulation and the control panel than ejection. And that's why I drove to the 5 laws of power from the book, 48 Laws of Power from John Green. Talked about law number 5, I'm done with that. Now I talk about law number 9, win through actions, never argument. It's sad that we had to argue so that we can show our actions, but we should win now through actions. Number 29, plan all the way to the end. Number 38, master the art of timing. And number 48, preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. I'll stick with number 38 right now and number 45, not 48. Master the art of timing and preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. That is how you remain relevant in this position. We talked about whether the demonstrations are losing relevance. But how do we remain relevant is, number 1, knowing when to stop, to say no, to say yes, to say change. That master of timing, and this is why this conversation that we're having right now is so dire at this time. I think it is time to push our actions. And now, what next, Trevor? And I told you I'm going to answer that question directly. I feel like it's time for both parties, the demonstrators, the Kenyans, and the government, to drive a change forward. And this is how. Number 1 is, as the government should support the businesses affected by goons. So far, we saw many buildings burning down, Naivas and Quickmart infiltrated. We hope they had insurance for that. And so many other people who are affected. If you know a person whose building, whose business was in a building that was burnt down, you know, forward their names. Let's see how we can help them, bring back their capital, what have you. Let's see, tell the politicians in those areas, how can we help them? That is number 1. Number 2, this is a great, great point that I really wanted to put forward on Citizen TV today. That is tourism. Last year, to bring it into perspective, we received, this is summertime, by the way. We should recognize that this time right now is summer. This is when we received most of the tourists in the country. Last year, during summertime, we received 1.1 million tourists, a record number. And in Rwanda, they received 2.9 million shillings. 2.9 million tourists, I mean. Why I'm mentioning Rwanda is because Rwanda is a small country, nearly smaller than Nairobi. It's landlocked. Rwanda has 1 Java in the whole of the country. It does not have a wildebeest migration in summer. It does not have the Masai Mara. It does not have the kind of culture that we have. Why did they receive more tourists than we did with our coastline, with our Masai Mara, with our wildebeest migration? It's because the young people of Rwanda did one great thing. For more than 6 months, they were on Twitter saying, visit Rwanda. Visit Rwanda. We saw it on Arsenal shirts even. Visit Rwanda. How many times have you seen Visit Rwanda even you as your person, as yourself, even at this panel. One thing that you can also do as a what next is realize that these demonstrations have instilled fear in tourists, and now hotels might suffer. You're there on X, you're a hotel receptionist saying Ruto must go. You do not realize that if your hotel does not bring in revenue and you're the last in, you'll be the first out in retrenchment. So you're also slowly driving your unemployment. Then when you get unemployed, you say, Ruto must go now even more. Ruto must go. In fact, even now. Now we're even losing our jobs on top of having unemployment. No. Now, another thing that we should do is go to now the X spaces. We realize how strong our Twitter is. We realize how strong our socials are. Now we'll start tweeting. #Magical Kenya. #Tembea Kenya. Let's go to Masai Mara. Nimeona watu wengi, influencers in Kodiani. Put a picture of Diani, just say, Tembea Kenya. Let us actively boost our economy.
But that will not finish our issues.
It will not finish, but it will be a start.
Yeah.
Saying what next.
How do we address
and the journey
let her finish. I'll give you all a chance to respond to the what next
question. And the journey
question.
of 1,000 steps starts with one. You're asking what next now. I've not said what next in a year. In a year, in fact, we should have, in 25th June, we should have the president come and tell us, this is what we have done so far in the year that we have done. You yourself have stated that even if he was to reform all the things that you have told him to, you yourself, Trevor, have said it will require time, right? It will do require time. But what now? What is in the next month? What can you do in the next week, Okay. Let's number one, support business owners. Number two, I've told, support tourism. Number three, be brave enough to be at the decision-making seats. It's easy to sit back behind the comfort of your home and tweet, right?
But the young ones like yourself don't want to have the dialogue.
Pardon?
The people don't want dialogue. The Gen Zs of your
And that's what I'm
generation,
saying, that it's easy to say you do not want dialogue. It is harder to be brave enough and actually be at the decision-making seats. I know the reason why people do not want dialogue, and I agree. And I started with this, is that we have lost trust, not only in our president, but in the whole governance system. We feel like if we put a channel for youths to speak, it will be infiltrated by people who will be corrupted by the president and little monies. Like we saw Osama say, people say Osama was given 1.2 million and whatnot. We are afraid. But it is also an opportunity to have that, that channel, and as well block all the other corruption, not just in that one channel, but in other channels, and say we still have a voice in this channel. Once you see corruption happening in these places, through this channel of young people that we have, we will stop these other things.
Let me bring in Wanjiku on this. Wanjiku, the main conversation here is what next, okay? So when Mudiora was saying we're trying to sell fear to people, we are not selling fear to anyone. When you're also saying that we're trying to tell people not to protest, nobody has said that. We're asking, what next? Even if you're going to protest, what are the actionable points? I mean, it's just a what next conversation.
Yes,
we are
Trevor.
not prescribing anything for anyone. But you had your point, so you'll write it down. Just write it down. Let Wanjiku speak, give our views on the what next. I'll come back to you as well. Yes.
So, Trevor, it's so important that we talk about what next, because we can't just be on the streets every day demonstrating. We also have to create solutions, because at the end of the day, every day we can't be crying. We have to offer solutions. And who can offer solutions better? It's ourselves. We say, because we're young and fresh and we know what's really ailing us, then we say, this is what we would like to see. For me, my example, I would say, is the president to have an initiative, bring back economy. Because at the end of the day, that's what young people are saying. The economy is bad, we don't have jobs, cost of living is high. So bring back economy. And also deal, and especially because also his campaign was largely on the backbone of Hustler movement. It was an economic conversation. So he can continue lodging on the economic conversation, because when he was campaigning, economy was bad. So can he have that bring back economy model or initiative so that he's able to really address the concerns of young people? Again, address the monsters of tribalism and corruption. This is also to say, okay, for example, we hope that he will deal with tribalism when he appoints a new fresh cabinet. At the end of the day, we said as young people, Storina, regional balancing, we don't care. All we want to see is meritorious cabinet. So tribalism is the first thing that he should deal with when he's appointing a cabinet. Again, corruption. And this goes back to us also, as what we've done, being active citizen. Let's de-escalate this conversation as well. We have seen what's happening in counties. The other day we saw the Isiolo governor being questioned. He's buying 1 crate of soda at 1 million. So this is where also money is we are losing money. Let's also de-escalate the conversation. I would like to say, and probably I think a lot of young people don't know, at what stage at county budget process are we in? Do young people know? No, we are at the audit stage. So let's also look at the audits. Where are we losing money? How can we save our money? And also, we're asking independent bodies who support and implement constitution, like EACC. Now, we want to see them also taking charge more and getting back our money so that it can be reinvested in our counties. Because at the end of the day, power was devolved, money was devolved for young people so that we can access it. Yes, we've held the president accountable, but we also have county governors who we should hold accountable. Our money is at county level. Let's go back there and participate. At this stage, you're at the audit stage, young people. So go and look at where our money is getting lost. After the audit stage, it's going to the formulation stage. By 15th September, we should be having public participation. Departments at county level will have already submitted their budget plans to the county. And then now we go to ADP public participation. Young people, where are you? Go actively and look and do the public participation. Say as young people, this is where we want money. Look at especially now, look at the youth and sports department. Look at what the CEC mean for youth and sports affairs is planning for you. Look at what the chief officer has submitted. I would like to say I was shortlisted for chief officer youth in Kiambu County. So I know already what that person is supposed to do. So that person is supposed to draft the budget. So young people should go and look at those budgets. Because if we are reviving the economy, if you want our country to get better, then it's not just a one-man's job. The president is just a lead, but it has to take each and every one of us to participate in building Kenya. And it's not an easy job, it's not. But Trevor, it's funny that every Sunday we go to church and nobody pays us. But when we ask people to go for public participation, young people are asking for money. Why? Okay. And it's us to build our country. At the end of the day, we can't always cry and say that this is not happening, but you're not holding people accountable. All right. Where the issue is at corruption. Okay. The president has already dealt with the wage bill and the spending. He's cut back. So let's go at county level. We have to observe where also the issues are at. Okay. And also to see that we've only just seen 23 counties participating in the protest. What are our other counties saying? What are the other young people of the county saying? Because again, there's also exclusion of other marginalized and grassroots young people. What is their voice? And that's where dialogue maybe will have worked, because we don't know what those young people are thinking. We know what the peri-urban young person is thinking and the urban young person is thinking. But what about that young man in Turkana or that young woman in Turkana? Our issues are very intersectional. Okay. The young woman in Turkana is fighting early marriage, is fighting teen pregnancy, but that hasn't come out. Okay. It's not what we are talking about. So also, as we push for change, also, let's also be inclusive. Okay. Let's ensure that no young person is being left behind, because it's a new Kenya. All right. It's a new dawn. So let's all move forward. All right. Not exclude. How do we move forward, Masaki?
I think, Trevor, I subscribe myself to radical politics, but not violence. Okay. If we have to move forward as a country, next is to have a discussion, because the issue that we're talking about here are not the same issues that are the same in Busia, in Lamu, in Kwale. Those are two different issues. So we need to have a national discussion and have a time frame, because the issues has been, how soon can this be implemented? Many young people have been asking, we are going to have this discussion, yes, but how soon can it be implemented? Let's have a time frame that we need within a span of 6 months or 3 months. We have these deliverables from the government so that we are able to deal with this menace for once. Because if we continue to let this protest go on, people continue to lose in business. People have taken loan to do business. They're going to lose money. So let's have a national discussion. Let's have a government of national unity that is inclusive and has composed of all the areas that the young people want. But the Gen Zs don't want the dialogue, Masaki. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The final call is to have a national discussion. Okay. Because that is the final call. Because even if we continue, even if today we say now the president is going, then who is going to leave the country to? Are you going to plunge the country into turmoil because we want the president to go? We still have the same problem. Let's have a time frame on how we're going to deal with these problems. and have these conditions placed on the table of government.
Yeah.
That we want these deliverables. You have agreed, yes, we don't want the office of the First Lady, the Second Lady. We don't want to have a big cabinet. Let's reduce the cabinet. Let's have that discussion and have a time frame. Because if we continue to agitate and we don't bring solutions to these problems, then we are still going back to the same issues that were there.
Yeah.
And will not be solving the problem.
But who will you have this conversation with? Because the president proposed 150 people, 50 of them were supposed to be young, 100 from multi-sectoral forums. In fact, the discussion was supposed to end tomorrow. It has not even started. Nobody knows where, how, which mode, who's there, who's been selected, who's not. How does this work in your view?
If we have a composition of all sectors, because we don't have, it's not about just the young people only. In the Gen Zs, we have the millennials who are also part of it. Let's have a broad discussion of everyone, all inclusive, because the issue affecting us, it is broad-based. It is not just for the Gen Zs. Okay. We have the millennials, also part and parcel of the young people. So let's have a discussion, give a time frame. Let's say the issues of unemployment. This is how we're going to tackle it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what let's have the people who are saying that we've had enough dialogues. In fact, even right now, there's the National Dialogue Committee report that has not been fully implemented. There was a TJRC report. There was the WAKI report.
I agree.
People say the dialogue.
I agree, Trevor. The dialogue that we've had before, we did not have the inclusion of the young people.
Yeah, it wasn't youth-led.
It was not there. The young people are not on the table. We were sidelined.
Okay.
Now these discussions, the center of this discussion is the young people.
Okay.
How do you reduce unemployment? How do we fund the education system properly? Okay? How are we going to support the SMEs? So the discussion that we've had there before and the discussions that were there and the reports that were there did not factor the youth voice.
Okay.
Now we want the young people to be at the center. When you're talking about the cabinet, we are reducing it. How many are going to be young people? Okay. What is the caliber of young people that we're going to have there? So that it is broad-based.
Okay. All right.
Because the reports that were there before did not factor the youth voice.
Yeah. Okay. Wanjoy, I see you shaking your head. What do you suggest as a solution?
Thank you very much, Trevor. The president has advised us that I think he spends an annual budget of 1.2 billion. If the president doesn't know the issues facing Kenyans, then there is a problem. So I am personally not for dialogue.
What do you suggest?
What happens from now going forward, whether the president stays or the president goes, is squarely on the president. And I say this because the honest truth, the president knows what is wrong with this country. First, the level of corruption, both at the national government and at the county government, is getting out of hand. Something is terribly wrong. He said that we will need an additional 1 trillion. That's as per the budget before all this demonstration started. So for the president to call for a media roundtable and say, because of the finance bill, because you have rejected the finance bill, I am going to borrow 1 trillion, it means something is wrong. The same advisors are also not doing their job. Secondly, Trevor, we cannot start talking about tourism being affected, yet last year we did not have any demonstration, did we?
We did.
Yeah, for
Azimio demonstration.
For Azimio, yes. Yeah. But we cannot say that we are not going to protest because of tourism. Yeah. We are not going to keep quiet and continue suffering and allow the ills that are happening. KAA is alleged to have been leased out. There are negotiations that are ongoing to lease out JKIA for the next 30 years. There was no public participation. She speaks about public participation. Many people have participated in public participation, but governments, county and national, implement what they want. Case in point, the finance bill, for instance. We gave our views. Were they implemented? No. I will also give you another example. When you go to the counties, for instance, I come from a constituency called Kieni constituency. It has 8 words. The public participation happens in 1 word. In the East, Kieni East, and in another word, in Kieni West. For you to come from 1 word to go to that meeting, you might even spend 1,000 Kenya shillings to and from. So there are things that are not right in the way public participation is implemented.
Okay. So how do we get them? That's a question I keep asking.
So for me, we have to get the foundation right, the fundamentals right.
All right.
And the most important thing is that we have to have human-centered leadership.
Okay. So we go back to an election. Is that
No,
what you're
no, no, no. Before we get to the election, first, for me, my priority and my biggest concern is Parliament. I have lost trust in Parliament as my representative.
So should it be dissolved?
It should be dissolved.
Then
And I
go
wish
back to election.
that should be, for me, a priority.
Okay.
Because with a strong Parliament, then we can say it will play its part of oversight, right? But whether the president is to stay or not is squarely on him. And I'll tell you why. He one moment says, we have banned Harambes for all leaders and civil servants. Next Sunday, he goes to church, gives money. The president is back on top of vehicles, campaigning for 2027, giving us more promises before he delivers on the promises that he's already given us. So we need to see seriousness and commitment from him, which I personally, as a Kenyan, don't see it. When you tell me, let us dialogue, and I will go back again to, there are people who will have permanent disability, and then you kill us. I'm sorry, I cannot even trust you.
Okay. So back to my question again. So at this particular point, what solutions are you suggesting? Because you see, the thing is, if I was to come and demand something from you, Wanjohi, I have to tell you, this is what I demand. I'm asking for that pen of yours because I helped you buy it. I just can't come and say, Wanjohi, you need to do something.
Thank you very much.
What is that something?
No, no, no. For me, Trevor, and I say this from the bottom of my heart. Before I even have a discussion with you, there has to be an element of trust. I have to see remorse in you. I have to see that the people, for me, my priority is the people who killed, brutally murdered, in cold blood, brought to book. There is no way that somebody kills...
Resignation is not enough.
Resignation is not enough. In fact, why, please, the resignation is not enough because even after his resignation, we had people being killed on Tuesday. The police officers who have been claimed to have killed people on the 20th of June are still on the streets. We haven't seen a single police officer being brought to book. How else are we going to have a discussion? Finally, I worry that we are forming a government of national unity. Trevor, opposition exists for a reason. We pay them with taxpayers' money. They drive GK vehicles. So if they are now part of government, and this is why I say I'm worried about the 13th Parliament. This has to be the most useless and weakest Parliament we've ever seen. We are celebrating cabinet being fired. But Trevor, this cabinet should not have been hired in the first place. The president himself lamented their incompetence. We have a cabinet secretary that has threatened the food security of this country. Parliament sanitized them. So for me, I dare say that I am worried when I see that we are forming a government of national unity. I am disappointed in Baba. I am disappointed in the opposition because they need to remain. Opposition exists for a reason. And that is why the political unity increases my mistrust. When this administration goes after the media, when it starts abducting and shooting journalists, when they say switch off your cameras when they are live, when there are protests, it makes me question, what do you intend to do?
All right. Team, so now that we are on that stage of what next and solutions here as a country, what do we do now? Because Masaki is calling for a national dialogue so that there are actionable points. Wanjohi disagrees. So how do we get the reforms that we want?
Maybe just to say, Trevor, I consider this an opportune moment to really say, what are the biggest problems for the country? If I ask myself what those problems are, I think on the back of the protests from Gen Z and Kenyans broadly, the biggest one, I think, is cost of living. One of them is cost of living and wastage, and linked partly to the way government is spending, public spending. And I think there is a reason to that. There is a merit to that point. Because if government, for the last, not this government alone, for the last 15 years or so, we've been spending in excess of our budget, which has meant a lot of the money that would ideally have gone to private sector has now gone to government. And that has continued to raise the cost of living. I think there's an opportunity to help for Kenyans to continue agitating for transparency, to continue scrutinizing and pushing for for less wasteful spending. But I think that the other three problems, broadly, is young people and unemployment for young people. There is not a single family in Kenya today. I receive countless number of CVs every day. There is not a single family that doesn't have one person or two people looking for opportunities. I think we should be asking ourselves, what is it that we can do about that? And I agree with her. Tourism grew last year by about 30%. It could potentially grow this year by another 50%. If you have an additional 1 million visitors, it can easily generate $1 billion for the economy. That's a very good number. It reduces our demand for dollars, increases more employment, because there are few sectors in Kenya that create massive employment immediately. One of them is agriculture. The other one is hospitality, services. Okay, so because for every tourist that comes, there will be a cleaner, there will be a doctor, there will be someone that will be employed. A young Kenyan will be employed by that. So I actually do agree that there is a reason for that. But I think right now we should really be saying, with those three problems, lack of transparency or maybe corruption, young people especially, and unemployment for young people, low cost of business being slightly higher. What could we be doing? I would consider, for instance, the possibility of piggybagging on the president's agenda of digital jobs and say, what can we do around e-commerce to make sure, because we have a generation of young people that are e-commerce, that are technology savvy. We should be thinking about regulations that can foster e-commerce. And by fostering e-commerce, every part of this country can be addressable. If you are selling wares, if you are selling potatoes, if you are selling goods, if you are importing, if you are drip shopping, every person could potentially get some income if we actually create trust around our e-commerce. And we can only do that by fostering e-commerce regulations. President Barack Obama introduced the Startups Act. Yeah. And that catapulted startups in the US. Just pre-COVID, Africa had $5 billion coming to Africa from VC. Ideally, we should be asking ourselves, how can we get $1 billion of that to find a home in Kenya? And the right way to do that is to create enabling environment for startups to create here. Okay. I think we should look at the possibility of gas. We may not industrialize on the back of solar or on the back of wind, but gas from neighboring countries, industrializing along the coastal seat belt. Yeah. Most countries that have industrialized globally, Trevor, have done that on their coast belt because inputs come in very quickly and then exports can happen very quickly. It might be that some industries might not thrive in Naivasha, even though we have a good resource in geothermal. But there are some industries that can thrive. And I think the president has been doing a lot of work around, with AI now growing rapidly. Yeah. The amount of power compute needed in the next generation is astounding. In fact, Sam Altman says he's going to invest $1 trillion, looking to raise $1 trillion to invest in power. Okay. We should be looking at that possibility and say, what more could we be competitive as a country? We can't be competitive to export power. We can't be competitive in exporting agriculture jobs. We can export digital jobs. We can be a leader in e-commerce in the region. Okay. I think really that's it. If we could make it easy for enterprise to thrive, we can create jobs and incomes. Okay. With jobs and incomes, we can pay down debt and reduce cost of living. I think ultimately that's really what government should be. We should ask the government, however good a government can be globally, 70% of the jobs come from private sector. Okay. So the question is, what can we do to make private sector succeed? All right, let me bring in some feedback, then I'll come to all of you for closing remarks, a minute each, just your parting shot here. Let's bring up that feedback and see what you're saying. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Citizen Daybreak. I see here Bobo Tieno Wino says, Gen Z should now stop the protest and give President William Ruto time to implement their grievances, because he has at least taken some bold steps going on will make them irrelevant and politicians might hijack their movement. Okay. Sir Nixon says, now that Honorable Raila, who has a big following, is about to join government officially, will the Gen Zs who are in his fold continue to be in tune with the rest really?
He didn't ask us to go to demonstrate.
Remy says, as Kenyans, we should all be mindful of the adverse impacts of the demonstrations, closure of public spaces and various facilities, particularly on the right of the affected people to their socio-economic rights, notably the most vulnerable. Okay? Evan says, as a young person, I urge the president to listen to our plights as youth. President William Ruto should also ensure that youths are well represented in his government. Okay? You say it's a lie, Tim Kipchumba. Anyone who would have become the president and listens to the demands of the people and fulfill the promises made during campaign, things would have been different. The lies over lies has become too much. Okay? Peter says, let Gen Zs go slow. Their demands are too much. Some of their demands have been affected by the executive. We can't continue like this as a country. Okay? All right, Mudiora, closing remarks now.
Okay, Trevor.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I've been listening to what Kenyans have been saying. And the Gen Z movement is basically saying this. We want good governance and accountability. If the president was listening, he should have known that they are not asking for a government of national unity. But that's what he's offering right now. Those who have given their energy, their blood, their sweat, their tears, their lives, the property lost, they did not do this so that ODM can be co-opted in government. The last time that happened, we saw unprecedented levels of corruption. The elephant in the room in Kenya is corruption. That's what this movement is trying to ask the president to address. Because once we deal with corruption decisively, then we can start to create the jobs that young Kenyans need. But as long as the attitude is what it has been, we are not making progress. Trevor, this is where we lost it. Our president knows that he needed to listen to people. He went around the country. He made different charters with different stakeholders. He put that into a manifesto. Do you know how much counsel you can get with 1.2 billion? That's what our president has. We may sit here and purport to be advising him, but then this cannot rival the kind of counsel he gets. The AG, before he was sacked, came out and told us that the president does not seek his counsel. Yet, that is a cost that Kenyans bear every other time. We just need him to remember that absolute power corrupts.
Okay.
I mean, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Okay.
When he was elected, the first thing he did was he went and captured parliament by getting people to cross the aisle. And then shortly after, we saw corruption cases being dropped, meaning there was also capture of the judiciary. When you have absolute power, there are things that will be hidden to you from the people you are leading. That's what has happened for him. Let him allow for institutions to carry out their mandates without interference. Let him listen and act.
Okay, we have just a minute to close. We are really pressed for time. Just closing remarks. Just a minute each.
My closing remarks will be this, Trevor. I'm in the finance world, and there are two large, but they're not only branches, but two large branches in finance. That is accounts and finance. In accounts, we talk about finance of the past. And in finance, you talk about finance of the future. When in accounts, you require people like Wanjuki here, who has a strong voice to say, where are the numbers, where are the papers? The numbers are not tallying. And that is what we are seeing a lot with the Gen Z protests, because they demand accountability. But right now, at this moment, what we require is a finance-driven mindset. Because the reason people don't go into finance so much is because it involves a lot of speculation and risk. But in speculation and risk is how we will get numbers to give to the accountability people to tell them, this is what we try to do. We invested in this stock, we tried the discussion way, and then you go back to the account people and tell them the discussion did not work. You know, what next? And I'll close it with this. I'll close it with the story of Wangari Maathai. We all know and love and respect the late Wangari Maathai, and we know what she did for our country. Nairobi is the only city with a park, capital city with a park in Africa, and we respect that, and we give that wholly accountable to the late Professor Wangari Maathai, and she stripped naked in front of police officers and with all the other women, and then she said, "You're not taking over this park, and you're keeping it." But then the difference between Wangari Maathai and the demonstrations is she had a plan. She already had the Green Belt movement behind her, and was able to tell her, now that you have stopped the construction of this Uhuru Park, with this movement is what we'll do. And that's what the demonstrators should have and should do coming forth.
Okay, Wanjiku, closing remarks.
Thank you. For me, I'll advise the president, begin a transitional reconciliation process. And the only way we can have a reconciliation moment is that people get justice. Families who lost, for their fallen heroes, families who lost their sons and daughters, let them get justice. And then that way you can be able to build trust with and show empathy to Kenyans. Number two, come up with a job creation strategy. Give incentives to investors. Let's see the economy come back. Have a bring back economy initiative. Number three, implement the 2/3 gender role. Give justice to women of this country. We've done so many attempts. This will be the 16th attempt. As you battle with NADCO, we have a multi-sector working group report for the women. Please implement 2/3 gender role as you had promised us. Number three, for young people, offer yourselves for leadership. We keep complaining, but you're not seeing leadership. So let's now start showing leadership, because we are preparing for 2027. If we have a problem with this parliament, then you know what transformative leadership looks like.
Okay.
Offer yourself as leadership. As young people, go and register as voters, because young people vote on social media. It's not done that way. Go register as a voter. IEBC offices are open at constituency level. You can do that right now. Let's not do last-minute rush. And above all, let's be careful with what we say. Let's be careful with what we post. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation going on around Kenya. We have a lot of propaganda. So let's not incite Kenyans. When you post, please be careful, because we only have one Kenya. And anything that you do, let it be for our country, our nation.
Masaki?
Number one, let's deal with corruption decisively. Any person who plundered public resources should be held accountable. That is one of the ways that we're going to reduce this tension. Number two, create an environment for young people to get opportunities, to do business and get employment. Number three, let's have a people-driven agenda, especially the young people. We are at a prime moment for us. We have been brought to the table now. Let's have this discussion and let our agenda be heard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wanjiku?
Mr. President, you have an opportunity to be the president that ushers Kenya into the next level of growth and lays that foundation. Please prioritize your people. Debt repayment is not more important than your people. You can restructure, you can push for the debt restructuring. Zambia was able to do it after defaulting. Kenya can also do it. Secondly, deal with police brutality. Let the police officers who committed cold-blood murder be brought to book. Let those politicians who hired the goons be prosecuted. And finally, to the young people, a luta continua. Change does not happen overnight. It takes time, but let us keep at it until we get to where we are going. I can see, I can smell change, and it's a beautiful thing to be alive to witness this. Kenya will be fine. Okay. Kenya always has a way of bouncing back, but for now, let us put pressure. Let's continue creasing. Let pressure continue creasing until the very end.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Our economy is $120 billion today. If I were the president, I would ask myself, how can we grow that tenfold? If we grow our economy tenfold and make sure that there is no corruption, I think there will be enough jobs for the many young people, because the greatest opportunity in the next decade is that one of connecting young people to opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Samuel Masaki, National Youth Leader, Muthiora Karriara, former presidential running mate, Tim Kipchumba, founder, Mentorthon Foundation, Wanjiku Thiga, founder, Gears for Change Initiative, Wanjoy Njoroge, youth consultant, and Josephine Wanjiru, youth and gender advocate. Thank you all for making time this morning. We'll continue to have these conversations, and thank you all for sending in all the feedback that you did. Coming up next is Level Up. Yes? Yeah, with Bensu. He's already here on the decks. See you in just a bit. Have a fantastic weekend ahead, guys. Bye for now.